I was driving on rural roads with my young son and nephew when I heard that a farmer shot and killed a young Cree man named Colten Boushie.
When my brother was shot on August 9th, I was dancing at a powwow, and my cousin comes up to me before I danced with tears in her eyes, and she said that Coco had died.
Is there any Native people in that jury? No? Huh.
We talk about unity, we talk about reconciliation. What are you going to do?
Okay, so I'll hold it. Okay, crawl through. I'm gonna go to the other side. Huh? Okay, you're in. Good job. I am Cree, and I was raised by a homesteading family in southern Saskatchewan. I was adopted, one of many Indigenous children raised away from our culture.
Hey.
Yeah?
Do you ever want to go back, like, how it was? Like, before the settlers came?
I'm not sure.
The Prairies have a complicated history, and Indigenous people are often at the receiving end of racism. My son and my nephew have been taught to not accept it, to not internalize it, even when we feel it every day. Our motto is "This is our territory. We belong here," even if people try to make us think we don't. The boys and I were traveling in the summer of 2016 when I found out a young Cree man named Colten Boushie was shot and killed by a farmer. On that summer day, Colten and some young people spent the day drinking and swimming. On the way home, Colten and two young women were asleep in the back. There were two young men driving, and they stopped at a farm. One tried to break into a truck by hitting it with a .22 rifle, which broke. The SUV they were in had one tire on the rim. Gerald Stanley was known for fixing cars. The young men drove into his yard. One jumped on a parked quad. Gerald and his son Sheldon started yelling, so he got back in the SUV and they tried to drive away. Sheldon smashed their windshield with a hammer, and Gerald kicked their taillight, then ran to get a gun. Driving on the rim and unable to see, the driver hit a parked SUV and came to a stop. The two young men ran. Stanley fired 2 shots. Colten woke up and jumped into the front seat. A moment later, he was dead from a close-range shot to the head. The remaining 2 witnesses later testified that Stanley's wife said, "That's what you get for trespassing."
Could have shot the gun in the air and told them, "Get out of the car. You guys are going to sit on the side of the road while the RCMP are on their way." But he took it upon himself to justice. He figured, oh, you know, they're on my land, without considering a life or anything, just go out there and just start shooting his gun at people, walk right up behind my son and shoot him in the back of the head. A mother does not deserve their children to go before them.
The next day, the RCMP issue a press release, but instead of focusing on Colten's death or Stanley's actions, they say Colten's friends entered private property, are suspected of theft, and that someone died as a result. Numerous online comments are quickly posted. Many are made on farmers' Facebook groups, but some also come from people living in towns and cities.
When I went on Facebook, And I seen all these comments by people about thieving Indians getting what they deserved. Don't go on people's property if you don't want to get shot. You know, we work hard for our stuff and you're gonna come and steal it, I'd shoot you too. And reading all these comments, and I'm like messaging, like commenting back as fast as my fingers will type. And at one point I just grabbed my phone and I threw it at the windshield.
Gerald Stanley is charged with second-degree murder 2 days after Colten's death. Stanley's first court appearance is in North Battleford at the provincial courthouse. There is a significant RCMP presence.
Not remorseful. No remorse in this man's eyes or his family's for a lost baby. Although there is a lot of anger, a lot of grief, the legal system will do its part in terms of the RCMP investigation as well as the court process. We need to have confidence in that moving forward, and hopefully that justice will be served.
At the bail hearing, it comes out that Stanley used a restricted handgun to shoot Colten, and that there were 12 guns found on his property. Eventually, Stanley is released on $10,000 bail. Red Pheasant, Sweetgrass, Little Pine, and Poundmaker are some of the surrounding First Nations in the Battlefords, named after the chiefs who negotiated Treaty 6 with the Crown. Stanley's farm is just a few miles away from Red Pheasant, where Colten was from. This area is where Canada hung 8 warriors in 1885 without legal representation, after they fought back against government agencies who were starving them to death. It is also where Canadian troops fired cannons into Cree camps. It is a heartbreaking history that continues into today.
The night it happened, we had dinner, he didn't show up. I put his food in the microwave. When I looked out the window and I saw a big line of cars coming. And I looked out there and I told the boys, I said, look, there's something going on. Look at all these vehicles coming. Next thing you know, we were surrounded by cops. They drew their guns, surrounded the trailer. And I asked them what's going on. And they said, are you Debbie Baptiste? And I said, yes. And I said, what's Colten Boushie to you? And I said, my son. And they said, your son's deceased.
Ran to the back room to tell my older brother that they're saying our little brother's dead. They all swarmed the house. They came inside, went room to room, closet to closet.
And I started screaming. I was holding my hands, and he held me back, put my hands, and he said, get yourself together. And then while he was shaking me and telling me that, he was smelling my breath. And I was like, what did I do? Why are you guys doing this to me? What did I do? But sitting home waiting for my son to come home, and his dinner was in the microwave.
Many people don't know that the RCMP enforced the Indian Act, the pass system, and other oppressive policies.
Handcuffs.
So this one, the first one we're going to look at is from North Battleford. So 4 Cree squaws from the 5th to the 12th November.
What does it mean, squaws?
Well, that's what they used to call
1889.
a square walk, what they used to call women. But it's a derogatory term now, especially. This one's from Fort Walsh. Council held this afternoon with Indians. Big Bear signed treaty at 5 p.m. One of the things that Butcham always said is that we're here because the people who came before us loved us so much. Right? That's how come we're still here. Because those who came before did whatever they could so that you guys would be here and that your kids would be here. And it's been really hard. Right? It's been really hard.
Yeah.
Our people have had a hard time. And those hard times aren't done yet. But we want things to be better for you guys.
It would wipe your tears, but
I know, right? It's okay. It's a thought that counts.
We gotta get as many as possible, right? So hundreds of voices are louder than one voice. Yeah.
The family is losing trust in the process, so they hire their own lawyers. They're also worried that racism will affect the trial, so they launch a petition to ask for an out-of-province prosecutor.
Next day, we all went trick-or-treating and everything, and we come home and came to good news that Colten was born. Ever since then, we've always had a big celebration like this. All of us kids would get dressed up and go out trick-or-treating.
Yeah, and that's how Colten was born. Yeah.
We were cruising down the road and he took a selfie of us. But I carry this with me everywhere. When he was a little boy, he was so smart. He had Harry Potter glasses. And he was really into science. And then if somebody was speaking about, something, and he would correct them, and he would say, he'd have these little Harry Potter glasses, and he'd push him up, and he'd say, scientifically, I don't think that's right. And then he'd said, when he was a little guy like that too, he said, the world would get along if everybody just get a good book and go sit under a tree.
Saskatchewan's Department of Justice ignores the family's petition for an outside prosecutor. During the jury selection, both the prosecution and Stanley's defense team have 14 peremptory challenges. They can veto potential jurors without giving any reason why. Despite the racism displayed since Colten's death, no one is asked if they have bias against Indigenous people.
So they picked out 7 women and 5 men? Okay. Is there any Native people in that jury? No? Huh.
As people started coming in, it was mostly like non-Indigenous, like white people coming through the doors. And all of a sudden this really tall Native dude, long hair, glasses, walked in, and he looked around, and I thought, cool, like maybe, another Indigenous person. And he walked up to that jury table, like, cause they have to check in. And he walked up to check in, and I looked at Lyle, I was like, I'm gonna start to cry. Cause it gave me hope that Indigenous people were potential jury members. And immediately Spencer's like, challenge. So he sat down. We just gotta pray that they go into it with an open mind and see the evidence and the truth for themselves.
Yeah. What I always kind of wonder is, he could have shot him in the arm, in the leg, right directly back of the head. So you can't say it was an accident?
Stanley made a choice. He decided to run after a gun instead of running after a phone.
Been waiting and waiting, so it's finally here. No more wondering. No more wondering, sitting up at night, wondering why this guy gets to roam around free while the rest of us suffer and cry and miss him. It's always going to be like this. This is never going to go away.
The trial will last 2 weeks. The temperature has dropped to the -30s. Throughout the trial, the family will feel the pressure of the media spotlight.
I was wondering if you have any sort of comment to make to the media or anything in regards to the trial as it gets underway today.
Just justice for my son, Colten Boushie. Excuse me.
The Battleford courtroom is small. Gerald Stanley's family sits on one side, and Colten's family sits on the other. The trial is the Crown versus Stanley. Colten's family and their lawyers have no standing or say in what happens inside. The Crown prosecutors barely communicate with them. Stanley's defense team includes Scott Spencer and several junior lawyers. A few days earlier, Spencer issued a statement saying the trial is not a referendum on race. The word racism will never be mentioned throughout the proceedings. Bill Burge is the lead prosecutor. He begins by calling members of the RCMP. We learned that the search warrant was delayed and that the vehicle where Colten was killed was left uncovered for over 24 hours. During this time, rain fell on the scene, washing away much of the evidence. Observers find out the young people spent 18 hours in custody before giving their statements. Stanley's lawyers question them at length about their actions prior to entering the Stanley farm. Some feel the witnesses are the ones on trial.
We know that there's been many issues raised in terms of stealing, theft, racism, murder, all of these issues that are playing on a lot of emotions. But, I guess moving forward, we need to have that confidence that the Crown prosecutors are going to be asking the proper questions and doing their due diligence with all the witnesses that are taking the stand. I don't know if we've felt that today.
Stanley's lawyers make the case that this was an accident, a hang fire, a delay between pulling the trigger and the bullet firing. An RCMP gun expert testifies that hang fires can only last a maximum of half a second. For what the defense is arguing, the hang fire would have had to have been significantly longer. Spencer attempts to bring in anonymous posts from online forums that claim longer hang fires exist, but he's turned down by the judge. He then calls up a last-minute witness who describes having a long hang fire 40 years ago while hunting gophers. Spencer claims that when the gun inexplicably went off, it was pointed downward, inches from Colten's head, because Stanley was reaching into the vehicle Colten was in. Stanley takes the stand and is given the actual gun to demonstrate his actions.
To see the man who held that gun and shot him in the back of the head reenact what he did, that was one of the hardest things that I've ever seen. And have to sit there and endure. All we want is justice for Colten.
By now, most observers feel that a murder conviction is unlikely. Manslaughter includes the careless use of a firearm, so this is the verdict people are now expecting.
Alvin, would you be satisfied with a manslaughter result instead of second-degree murder?
I just want to get this done and over with, and it's been
hanging over my head, my family's head for quite a while, and you know, it's time that my family starts to heal and move on. And you know, as long as Gerald Stanley is charged and be accountable for his actions of taking a young Indigenous man's life.
The judge tells the jury they have 3 choices: to find Stanley guilty of second-degree murder, manslaughter, or not guilty. The family and their supporters have nothing to do but wait for the verdict.
How the angle of that bullet went through my nephew. It's almost upwards.
He had to be like this. We did that this morning. We went outside with some reporters, and there was a Ford Escape sitting out there. I think it was Globals. About the same kind that you got that was used in this situation. And yeah, they tried it. You have to reach in over the steering column, and the key is in there, and then you have to turn it, because you had to turn it off.
Yeah.
And if you're holding something,
yeah,
it's just about impossible to do that.
Yeah,
because we were trying it, couldn't do it.
The jury announces they've reached a verdict. The words "not guilty" hang in the air. I see a jury member smile at Stanley. The sheriffs jump up and rush Stanley and his family out of the courtroom. Most of the jury jumps to their feet and runs after them. A couple of them stay seated, crying. It feels like everything has changed. Several trucks circle the courthouse, revving their engines. When I ask the crew to film them, one starts to record us as well.
All he ever focused was how much the kids drank. How far was the drive from Red Pheasant to Maymont? Who all took a swim? Who cares? A young boy got killed. A young boy got killed, point blank.
This verdict, this acquittal, it sends the message that it's open season on Indigenous people. But it's not. It's not. The whole process has been stacked against this family from the beginning.
Through the last year and a half, there was still a little bit of an inkling of faith in the legal system. I don't know if justice system is the proper term to be used. But when we can use excuses in today's society as an engine revving, a vehicle driving into my yard, someone hopping on my quad, to chasing them down and smashing their windows, kicking their taillights out, shooting them, and we're in a very troubled place.
Thousands of people attend over 30 rallies held across Canada and the US, all calling for justice for Colten.
Use it to fuel our decolonization. Use it to fuel the stories you're going to tell your children of the change that needs to happen.
Less than 24 hours after the verdict, a meeting is arranged between Saskatchewan's newly appointed premier and the family.
I would like to take the opportunity to have more of a conversation, if you will, with Colten's family on on anything of your choice.
We have, a 100-year-old judicial system. It's got some great things in it, but it's also got some huge shortcomings, especially when we deal with First Nations.
And as the investigation went on, to hear that at the preliminary to hear that officers who've only been on the force for a couple of years are the ones who handled the evidence, that the lack of resources that were put towards this investigation, how it was treated so neglectfully, how Colten laid out in the rain, how he was not covered, that vehicle was not covered, evidence was washed away. My brother laid out in the rain while his blood was being washed away. And this is the evidence that's presented in court on his behalf. That's what the jury had to use to make a decision because it was shitty evidence to begin with. And I couldn't say that. I couldn't say that to the public, that this is what my family is dealing with, because I wanted to give the system a chance. So hi, thank you again. And I love each and every one of you, and I just wish many blessings for your home and your families.
Two days after the verdict, the family gets on a plane to Ottawa. They want Colten's death to mean something and for the system to be held to account for how it failed them.
And I think Chris has been very clear that this whole process of the justice...
Everyone on Parliament Hill wants to hear what Colten's family has to say.
Everyone's kind of holding it together by a string the last 24 hours. It's just been such a...
The media's interest in the family remains high.
My family and I were here to share the hardships, the racism, and the discrimination that we felt and experienced all throughout the process. And we're hoping that by vocalizing and sharing what we've been through, that it doesn't fall on deaf ears.
And I know this has been very short, but I'm grateful for you both coming in very much.
Am I done for today?
You're done.
I'm 13 years old and in grade 8. I am so sorry for your loss. Just think about all the good memories of your son. He will always be in your mind and heart. Hi, justice for Colten.
Every time I give up and I give up hope, and this happens.
Our sunshine.
Debbie, why don't you come sit beside me? Want to sit here?
Sure.
Thank you so much for coming in. I know you've had some busy days of meetings. Let me just say off the top that, like I said on Friday and Saturday, our heart goes out to you, to your family, to the whole community. This is a time for reflection on how we keep coming to this point as a country and how we can make sure that no families ever suffer again the way you guys are having to suffer this year.
That's the message I want to get across. It's a constant nightmare. And I have to go through this life without my son.
Our cameras have to leave after a few minutes, but I'm allowed to stay. Trudeau seems willing to listen, but doesn't commit to doing anything concrete.
We don't just speak for my brother Colten. We represent all those who have also went through the process and received no justice and face all the systemic discrimination that we've endured. We stand here for them, and that's what Justice for Colten is about.
Thank you. Can I ask, some people are interpreting the fact that you've met with the Prime Minister and several cabinet ministers as the government taking sides in this court case, and I wonder how you feel about that.
So it's a human issue. It's an issue of Canadian justice and about the inclusion of Indigenous people within the Canadian justice system. So it really is an issue for all of Canadians.
3 Conservative MPs request a meeting. Despite being from Saskatchewan, their leader, Andrew Scheer, declines to attend.
It's come a long way. We got a lot more to come. We realize that. Our education rates are certainly not where we need them. But once we get there, the prosperity, we want to share the economic.
But it's not just Indigenous youth who need educating. It's your people who need educating about the true history of Saskatchewan. The world is watching your constituency to see what you're going to do and what the community leaders are going to, what the Saskatchewan leaders are going to do in response to this.
The only way we can move forward from these types of situations or any type of situation is by having conversation. Right? And really lending a hand out to one another. That's the only way that we're going to reach healing and reconciliation and relationship with people.
This racism needs to stop, and you could probably start with those farmers with firearms that say nothing but racial discrimination on that page. We don't have a page like that. We respect human life.
We talk about unity, we talk about reconciliation. What are you going to do? As human beings, as people within your position even, what is your answer to this going on in Saskatchewan?
A month after the verdict, Saskatchewan's Department of Justice declines to appeal Stanley's acquittal. Colten's family is devastated. The province will go on to strengthen trespass laws. The online comments continue to pour in.
Doesn't matter if you're red, white, blue, green. Who cares what color you are? It's not a race issue. It's a criminal against a victim. And we're victims and we can't do anything about it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, and
you know what? I'll spell it out right now, right here and here. Probably 80% of us, farmers here, will do exactly what Gerald Stanley did.
Okay, well...
you know?
And
that's how it's got to be. I got to protect my stuff no matter what.
Okay, defensive property and defensive person are two different things entirely.
I have a ranch, and I got to look after it. And then, in my thinking, I'm not going to shoot somebody for a quad or an expensive machine. If I do that, I got to live with that. It's all about education. I know that if a guy is doing that, hey, I'm in a rough situation, but that's the way it is.
The family feels the provincial and federal governments are stalling on making substantial changes. So they decide to advocate at the United Nations. Jade is chosen as the spokesperson. The family has been given a seat, but Jade still has to make it on the speakers list. The session has a strict closing time of 6 p.m.
Dispossessions and violence.
J'invite la rapporteuse spéciale sur les droits des peuples autochtones, Madame Victoria Tauli Corpus, à prendre la parole.
Madam Chairperson of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues.
It's now the afternoon, and Jade is still not on the list.
Le hamaï de leur présence cet après-midi.
I think if somebody's accused...
6 o'clock has arrived, and time has run out.
This demonstration of support inspires me to remain strong and to further pursue my commitment to the promotion and protection of Indigenous people's rights.
Je vous remercie. Donc, je fais une exception à la procédure. J'avais déjà annoncé la clôture, mais je me suis rendu compte que dans la salle, il y a une situation spéciale qui mérite notre attention.
I am the sister of the late Colten Boushie, a 22-year-old Nehiyaw Napio from the Red Pheasant First Nation, a Cree community in the state of Canada. Colten and his Indigenous friends drove onto a settler farm one afternoon in August 2016, where he was shot in the back of the head by a non-Indigenous farmer named Gerald Stanley. An all-white jury acquitted Gerald Stanley of all charges. Colten was the baby boy of the family. Colten had a promising future with a strong work ethic. He had just received his forest fighter certificate. He was a traditional helper trained with ceremonial protocol and was always helping his people. Colten was not a thief. He was a kind and generous young man. I recommend that the Special Rapporteur and the expert mechanism undertake a study on the systemic racism and discrimination against Indigenous people within the judicial and legal systems in Canada. This study must produce recommendations to ensure the protection of Indigenous families who utilize the judicial and the legal systems. This will advance our calls on the Canadian government to establish a Royal Commission on the elimination of racism in the justice system. Only a Royal Commission has the authority to compel all involved in this miscarriage of justice.
My adoptive parents live on the family homestead that was settled by my great-grandparents. I learned to shoot at a young age and was always taught to respect guns.
Rule number 1, always assume the rifle is loaded. Always.
Okay.
Always assume it's loaded. Number 2, always point this away from people or animals or buildings or anything you don't want to shoot.
Oh, wow. That sounds pretty good.
That sounded good.
Yeah.
Just waiting for the wind to go.
My grandpa is 92. He saved all the artifacts he found when he broke the land, and he's giving them to us.
I could see where there was teepee rings, stones for teepee rings in 2 or 3 places down there. That's when I kind of thought, you know, maybe I shouldn't be breaking this up. But I went ahead and done it. Grew wheat.
It's a hard time right now, Grandpa.
Yeah, it's a troubled world.
And that's why I decided to do the film, because I knew the day when Colten was shot that things were going to change. I don't want him to be looked at like he's not as important. And I'm scared because I know there's people out there that's how they feel.
I think you're always going to find that some people are going to be racist. Think they're better than the next guy. It's always been that way.
Well, and I think too it's because a lot of it's over property, you know? So it's not like somebody's life was in danger, you know? It's over stuff.
Yeah, there's always 2 sides to that story though, Tasha. What was the reason they were there?
Well...
And you have something of your own you worked hard to get. How do you protect it?
Not by shooting someone. Not by shooting someone.
No, I agree with you 100%, but what's the answer?
I just want people to understand each other better.
That's what needs to happen. It will happen, I think. It'll take a long time, though. I think it'll take a long time.
Juana wants to smudge. Do you want to smudge, Grandpa?
So what's this supposed to do?
This just helps clean and clear
Oh, I see.
any negative things or
I'd like to thank everybody for being here today. Colten would have been 25. This is his favorite holiday, so everybody make some wishes on your balloon when you send it up to your loved ones. Let Colten know that he isn't forgotten. And today was his day. So thank you for all coming. Hi, hi.
Happy
birthday, Happy birthday! 1, 2, 3! Love you!
That looks cool. Yeah.
I really wish you guys had met Colten. I wish you had all had the opportunity to meet him and know more than what happened to him and what happened to my family, and know more about just the memories we share, but to actually know him. You guys would have really liked him.
As I sing and hold you tight, pray that you will grow into a man to hold on to, and no matter paths unknown, you'll find shelter from the storm.